All right, Mr. Chairman, we're on the air. You need the gavel?
Dennis, Victor will be here.
So I can't say this.
I would like to call the July 13th meeting of the Long Hill Township Planning Board to order at 7:30. Can we have the announcements, please?
Absolutely. Number 1 on the agenda, call to order and statement of compliance. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by posting a copy of the public meeting dates on the municipal bulletin board and website, by sending a copy to the Echo Sentinel newspaper, and by filing a copy with the municipal clerk. Number 2, standard board procedures. Any hearing conducted by the board is a quasi-judicial proceeding. Any questions or comments must be limited to issues that are relevant to what the board may legally consider in reaching a decision, and decorum appropriate to a judicial hearing must be maintained at all times. Number 3, meeting cutoff. Announcement is made that, as a matter of procedure, it is the intention of the planning board not to continue any matter past 10:30 p.m. at any regular or special meeting of the board, unless a motion is passed by the members then present to extend the meeting to a later specified cutoff time. Number 4, electronic devices. All in attendance are asked to mute cell phones or any electronic devices as to not interfere with the proceedings. Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call. Deputy Mayor Ray?
Present.
Committeeman Veleza?
Present.
Ms. Dill?
Present.
Mr. Hands?
Here.
Mr. Malinowski?
Here.
Mr. File is absent this evening. Mr. Richardson?
Here.
Vice Chairman Jones?
Present.
Chairman Sandow?
Here.
Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you. The first item of business this evening is the subdivision on Delaware Avenue, application number 18-01 Zulu. There's a lot of miscellaneous board business to conduct, and so we will attempt to close out the hearing at 9:45, a little over 2 hours from now. That'll give the board about 45 minutes to do the other things it has to do tonight. I'm going to start by asking Mr. Levine to tell us just exactly what's happening. I'm sorry, Mr. Vitale. Where did I get that from? Read your notes, Dennis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Board. We're here tonight as continuation from the May 11th, 2021 meeting. And tonight we're going to present a sketch plat pursuant to Section LU 158.5 of the Township Code. And we would present that by Chris.
Would you come a little closer to your mic, please?
Chris Nisru of the ELP Engineering and Planning. He has testified before in front of this board and qualified as an expert. And he was sworn in before, and I request that the board continue that qualification.
Fine. Move ahead.
Is there a walking mic
Oh.
for here?
My apologies. Yeah. Thank you. I forgot to put that up here.
Chairman, if I may very briefly address the board, Richard Skolnick, I'm an attorney for some of the neighbors.
I'm sorry, you'll have to use the mic. I cannot hear you.
If I may very briefly address the board, my name's Richard Skolnick. I'm an attorney for some of the neighbors. Very briefly,
Make your point.
could we get clarification as to whether the applicant is now pursuing a density modification subdivision? That was the issue that was raised when we completed the last hearing, and you asked, I believe, the applicant for clarification. And the applicant's attorney just cited section 158.5, which is the density modification ordinance. So if they're pursuing a density modification subdivision, there's rules and procedures, but I would like to have an understanding of what the applicant is doing.
I'm sure that at the end of the testimony, you can ask questions until you get that understanding.
But Mr. Skolnick, I think we're jumping the shark. That's what I think Mr. Nusser is here to explain. And I did have this discussion over the last couple of hours, and I've been trying to figure out myself what this is about. We just discussed this a few moments ago. I am not the applicant's attorney. I will not opine on what the applicant is bringing before this board. It's up to the applicant to do that. I would just like to advise the board that neither a concept plan, which I assume that this was, and it may not be, we'll see what the applicant has to say, or a sketch plat requires notice. So the notice is fine. There are no jurisdictional issues before the board at this time. But I agree with Mr. Skolnick that we do need clarity. We do need some clarification on what this is. Our planner did a memorandum also under a certain understanding, so we would like to understand, as the board and the board professionals, what exactly it is that the applicant's bringing before the board tonight. So thank you.
Right, thank you, I appreciate it. We do have a letter from the applicant, to the applicant's engineering firm dated June 29th, seemingly indicating that they're pursuing the density modification ordinance, and again, that has certain...
Mr. Skolnick, let's let the applicant present his case, and then we can ask questions to clarify it.
Fair enough, sir.
You're getting way ahead of us here.
Not sure about that, but I understand. Let's see what happens.
Thank you.
All right, good evening, everybody. Let me get this. I'm going to try and not be in the way of this so everybody can see it. It may be easier for you guys to slide down a little bit. Apologize for any
Would you
inconvenience on
please
that.
be sure you're using that microphone close? I'm having a hard time.
Yeah, it sounds like I need to be almost on top of it, so
Thank you.
apologize. Okay, so elephant in the room. Let's.
Before you go on, is that a new exhibit? Is that
This is what was submitted.
Okay, and there are no changes to that
There's no
exhibit?
changes. This is
Okay.
just a print of exactly what was submitted to the board.
Okay, so we don't need to mark it, it's already been marked as part of the application, I'm going to say.
I have an extra copy if anyone from the public would like a copy.
Okay, so let's just first clarify, yes, the intention of this plan is this is a sketch subdivision plat intended to set basically the yield, the maximum number of lots
Chuck,
that would be part of.
Chuck. I got a soft copy.
I have another copy too, I have it on my screen if anyone else wants it.
I'm the messenger, don't shoot the messenger. Anybody else got one?
You're doing such a wonderful job, too.
Okay, so again, the purpose of this plan is to, in fact, provide the sketch subdivision plat in accordance with the density modification standards. The purpose of it, again, is to set the maximum number of lots that can be proposed as part of the density modification subdivision procedures. The letter that Mr. Skolnick has discussed, my letter of June 29th, outlines our compliance with those standards for the sketch subdivision plat. Just walk through it briefly for you. I don't know how much detail you're going to want from me on it, so I'll go a little bit. If you have some questions, then I can go in a little bit more detail. So the sketch subdivision plat that's proposed includes kind of a little awkward for myself here. Pinned myself into a corner. Includes the extension of Delaware Avenue, as well as 2 cul-de-sac roads to provide access to the lots. The subdivision, as your planner's letter points out, kind of ignores the rear portion of the lot, the southern portion of the lot, along the railroad tracks that's in the C zone. So what we're looking at is with the land area that's zoned R2, so the bulk of the lot to the north, what's a conforming plan in that area? Ultimately, if this were to proceed as a conventional subdivision in this manner, this area here that's within the conservation zone, the disposition of it is really, I guess, would be up to discussion with the board, whether it would be attached to the open space that is to the west, or whether it was just attached to this southernmost lot and made part of it. But again, that lot would have been split zoned, and the intention here is to show lots that conform within the R2 district. I know we've had a number of discussions as we've gone through these hearings that have pertained to the critical lot areas. We made sure in our letter to go through and discuss how we comply with those various areas. The one thing to note is on the north side of Delaware Avenue, there are no critical areas or critical area buffers, so that section is not something that really needs too much discussion. It's a simple subdivision layout there, no complicating factors, if you will. On the southern side, we have critical areas that include the steep slopes, the wetlands, and the flood hazard areas. Construction in those areas does not worded that incorrectly. The construction of a road or a driveway within those critical areas is not precluded by the ordinance. The ordinance simply states that the principal building and attendant features, such as a pool, a tennis court, a patio, a deck, those can't be within the critical areas. And so if you look at this plan, for Lot 1, say, and this is where it's going to get a little tricky on me, maybe if I stand this way. On Lot 1, on the northwest corner of the lot, within the building envelope, there's an area there outside of the critical areas, outside of the critical area buffers, where a dwelling could be constructed. So again, those critical area buffers, that 50 feet from the slopes, from the wetlands, from the flood hazard areas, that is for the principal building. So the principal buildings have to be located outside of those 50-foot buffers. With the remaining area, just you can't build those attendant features in the actual critical areas. So you could build a patio within the buffer, you can build a deck within the buffer, you just can't build it in the actual slope. So we have on Lot 1 an area for the construction of a home that would meet the requirements. On Lot 2, the buildable area is actually behind Lot 1, kind of on the eastern portion of the lot here. You would access down Road B and then through the stem of the lot over to that buildable area. And then Lot 3, there's an area in the center of the lot that is outside of all those critical areas. So we have 6 lots. They conform to the bulk standards of the R2 zone. They conform to the critical area standards. I will also note that among the requirements in the, within the density modification standards is that we provide a lot that has at least 20,000 square feet of non-critical land. Unless it's got a sewer, then it's 10,000. all of these lots comply with that standard. And again, just working through my letter here, item C in here, so this is that the maximum lot coverage requirements would have to be met such that no more than 70% of the non-critical areas would be impervious surface, because the actual zone standard is 15%. And so if we have a large quantity of critical areas and just a smaller area of non-critical, we couldn't have more than 70% of that. Given the amount of critical areas that we actually have on the lots, we would not be able to exceed 70%, meeting that 15% that the zone permits. That's my somewhat super summary to this plan. So again, is this on? Do I need it to be closer to me? Okay. So our intention here is to get the board's concurrence that our yield for a density modification subdivision would be 6 lots in accordance with this plan, which again we believe meets all those requirements within the ordinance for a sketch subdivision plat. And pending that agreement, we would then return to this board with an updated plan.
Okay, so just so we're clear, the applicant originally submitted a subdivision application for 8 lots. The applicant at this point is, I understand, abandoning that subdivision of 8 lots, and you are now proposing a subdivision of 6 lots, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So at this time, that subdivision application, now, we're not going to go back to it, correct? If we come back in another month or so? Is that
Correct.
what we're doing here?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. And the applicant also wishes to proceed under the density modification standards, even though it complies to the R2 zoning standards, correct?
That's correct.
And I guess this question is for Mr. Nusser. Can you explain why the applicant wishes to proceed under those standards when you can create 6 fully conforming lots under the R2 zone?
Sure, and I think actually it's, the density modification ordinance does a good job of outlining why you would want to do that.
Okay.
And that is to help limit the improvements associated with the subdivision. So as we don't have plans generated for this yet, obviously waiting on, we want to know that the board concurs with the number of lots in the yield before we would proceed with it. But the intention would be that those secondary cul-de-sacs would not be constructed, and that because there is a lesser frontage requirement associated with the density modification standards, that conforming lots could be made without the need for these additional cul-de-sacs. That's obviously less construction costs on the applicant's part, but then it's less costs on the municipality's part as far as maintenance of those features and everything that goes along with that. So again, I think the intention would be to kind of streamline the development, if you will, in that manner that the ordinance envisions.
Okay, and Chairman, if you'll indulge me just for one more moment, because I want to complete the housekeeping before we move on to board comments and questions. The applicant understands that at this point, when you do submit a fully engineered plan to the board, you're starting the process over and you will have to give new notice, correct? So that the public
Yes.
will be notified. So members of the public, you will be notified again about this application, and you will be able to view all of the plans in the office of the board secretary in advance of the meeting. In the event that you have any questions or any comments, hearings will be conducted on this application, and you will have another opportunity to view this. Thank you, Chairman.
Counselor, is this would this be a brand-new application? In other words, throwing out the old number that's 3 years old and marked for the zoning board?
Yes.
Yes.
I believe that, yes, when a new application is submitted, it will be a new application because the other application was for the eight lots. It was a different application. This is a new application.
What is the procedure to terminate the current application?
Well, I would ask for the applicant's attorney to send me a letter withdrawing that application and with the new submission to the board secretary, and we will work out whatever is left in the escrow account and any application fees that will be required. The ordinance does say that any application fees that are present for an application of this type when the sketch plat is submitted and you did pay application fees at this point, that they'll be transferred to the subdivision application once it's submitted. If there are any escrow fees that are in arrears, you'll have to submit those with the new application, unless it won't, we won't deem it complete without the escrow being replenished.
Understood.
Liz, do you have questions for the witness?
Just one question. On the proposed lots,
Close up, close to the mic.
oh, can you hear me? Okay, sorry. On the proposed lots 1 and 2, I can see where you could build outside of the critical areas, but can you meet the setback requirements from the critical areas?
For on lots 1 and 2, can we meet the setbacks? Yes, yeah, for a principal, yeah, you could build a principal dwelling outside of the critical area buffers within the building setbacks that would comply with the minimum dwelling square footage.
Okay, and then the other question I have, and I guess we'll see this when the new the new plan is submitted, but you would have to provide publicly accessible open space. And so do you have a sense of where you would put that open space?
Yeah, and so at this point, like I said, we don't have a fully worked out plan. Obviously, we've kicked around some ideas. That conservation zone in the back would obviously be kind of the anchor to any open space that would be part of the density modification subdivision. And, I would assume, which is all I'm going to do at this point, that given the amount of area located on the north side of Delaware Avenue, that open space would continue, probably be connected across Delaware Avenue and, kind of surrounding the lots that would be proposed on that side.
And just so I understand, are you proposing that you would not have these new roads, that everything would front on Delaware, or is that not correct?
Yes, the intention would be that we would solely front on Delaware and that we wouldn't need these cul-de-sacs.
Okay.
Again, that's, as of right now, I'm not necessarily committing to that without fully going through a design, obviously, but that would be the intention.
Okay, those are the only questions I have right now. Thank you.
So the roads that you're referring to, that's proposed Road A, proposed Road B on the plan?
Yes,
So you're saying that those wouldn't be necessary?
correct. And that's the benefit to the density modification subdivision, is that it allows for less infrastructure to have to be built and then maintained in the future by the municipality.
Whoa, would you say that again?
Yeah.
So the purpose and, one of the, if you go through the ordinance for the density modification subdivision, one of the purposes of it is to allow for a reduced infrastructure to be built. So in this case, less roads would be the reduction in infrastructure. Because again, if we go to a density modification subdivision, the lots become smaller, right? They're 31,500 square feet as opposed to acre lots. The lots need less frontage. And so, where those two roads, Road A and Road B, provide additional frontage for don't have the plan in front of me, so I can't read at this distance, but I believe it's lot 3, and then probably the furthest to the north lot. So we're providing additional frontage so that those lots are compliant with the zone standards. There's a reduced frontage requirement, which means we can provide lots that simply will front along Delaware, and we wouldn't require the construction of those cul-de-sacs.
I'm sorry, so that's Lot 4, which would be on the north side, and Lot 2, I think that's 2, Lot 3, which would be all the way to the south, right? Those are the two properties that we're talking about? So access would, that'd be like a Flagstaff property, where you'd have a driveway going back to that, as opposed to a roadway.
You mean in the future?
Yeah. I mean, I get it, this is a draft, a concept.
I'm still green, okay. So what it would be, because, and again, hopefully I can make this clear enough from this distance, where right now, this lot 4 has frontage here on the cul-de-sac bulb. Lot 5 has frontage along Road A as well as Delaware, and then Lot 6 has frontage along Delaware. What it would be, because this requirement is 150 feet of frontage, that goes down under a density modification subdivision. The requirement is less, and so instead of requiring that 150 feet, we can make basically 3 lots coming straight back off of Delaware, and they would have sufficient frontage.
Okay.
So you wouldn't need this road, you would just have 3 lots
Okay,
banding back.
okay. So so what you just depicted to me does not represent what's on that board?
No, because that would be what the density modification subdivision
Okay.
would look like.
Okay.
And this is the conforming plan to set, right, because the way the procedure works is we provide to you a conforming plan to
Mhm.
say, this is what we could do in a conforming sense, 6 lots. And then once we understand that 6 lots is the conforming number of lots, then we can come back with the plan of the reduced bulk requirements basically for it. The trade-off is, right, so we build smaller lots. It requires less roads to be built, less roads to be maintained, and then there's also an amount of open space that gets dedicated along with it. And that's the, kind of,
That's
the-
the compensation.
right, that's the, the trade-off in there.
Okay.
I'm afraid that I caused part of the confusion at the last meeting by asking that you specifically state the next time you came whether or not this is a density modified subdivision or not. And since my reading of this site plan says that all the lots are conforming to R2, I don't understand why you keep saying density modified. And is it possible in 20 words or less to tell me what makes this a density modified plan in your mind?
The plan that you have is not a density modification plan. This is the first step in what your ordinance requires for a density modification subdivision, which is to give you a conforming plan to the R2 standards. That was more than 20 words.
So you intend to modify this plan to shrink the lots to the standard of density modified?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's 20 words.
So it would have been helpful to have that picture here tonight as well, rather than...
And apologies on our part for not making that clearer ahead of time.
Let me be very... so you said the north side. Are we true on the south side to the same anticipation that you can get 3 lots all fronting onto Delaware?
Yes, I mean, there's some obvious constraints on there on how we would fit them in with the, with the critical areas and the setbacks from them. but the intention would be to build all the roads off of the extension of Delaware, or the connection of Delaware.
All the roads, that concerns me, I don't like when you say roads, there's one road, cul-de-sac, I would call it extended driveway, personally. So
David, your microphone, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. All right. All right. Not used to being back in the office, as it were. So,
You're not at home anymore.
no. I haven't been for a year. I've been in the office every day, 6:30, 6 o'clock this morning. So yeah, just help me, go through the road.
Mhm.
Focus on the road for a second.
Okay.
What your anticipation, you showed 2 here, there's one before, I think, 2 here. You just keep using the word road.
Right.
That troubles me, especially when I'm looking at this picture, this plat, where these roads abut straight onto somebody else's property.
Right.
And I know you may get around that by technically calling it a road. My point is, they're not really roads, in my opinion. So I don't know how we work that through. But just humour me on the where the road's going to go.
So, yeah, I mean, again, this plan is to show you what we could do that would conform. It's not the intent of what's going to be constructed. Certainly on the north side, we can easily do the 3 lots just right on Delaware. On the south side, I think more so on the south side than on the north side, there is the motivation to not build the road. The cost to construct that road is far higher than the cost to construct and, quite frankly, maintain the road on the north side, just because of the slopes that you're dealing with and those constraints. And then, yes, there is the other very sensitive matter of the fact that it's putting it right along somebody's property line, and it would make their side yard suddenly a front yard. And so, understanding that, there is no intention of constructing that road, and certainly not along somebody's property line.
But here's my other trouble, right? You talk about whether it's conforming or density modified. I think you're still talking about 6 properties under density modified, right?
Right.
And this is conforming with 6 properties.
Right.
So I'm just wondering how much thought has gone into this, so it actually sort of gives an idea what the final designs could be. Because you're talking about the same number of properties, so I wasn't quite sure
Right, and so
why that wasn't more obvious as to say, this is roughly what it looks like, as opposed to, this doesn't look anything like what the project looks like.
Well, to be fair, this looks nothing like what will ultimately come before you.
Oh, I get that. I don't want to waste your time by going away and thinking this is roughly.
Yeah, okay, yeah, this is just to show you what would conform and what we could get, that we could get 6 lots. We will go back, and like I said, the intention is to just simply connect Delaware through and have the lots front along there with no additional roads.
If you were
Well,
charged with retitling this drawing, what would the title be?
What is the title? Being as far away from it as I am and not having a
Since
separate copy.
this is not really a subdivision plan, this is a what-if sort of.
I took it as a concept plan. That's what I took it.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, can I just step in for 1 second? In the density modification subdivision section of.
Liz, I'm not hearing you.
Oh,
Is your
sorry,
mic
sorry.
on?
Yes, can you hear me now? Okay.
That's better.
In the density modification subdivision section of the ordinance, which is 158.51, it says an applicant proposing a density modification subdivision shall first submit a sketch subdivision plat to the approving authority, which in case the planning board, in accordance with the zoning standards enumerated in the schedule of bulk requirements applicable to subdivisions not under density modification provisions. And the purpose of the sketch subdivision plat is to establish the number of building lots to be permitted within the subdivision. So the ordinance calls it a sketch subdivision plat.
Still, concept.
Yeah, so I believe I was just using what the ordinance
Sure.
the ordinance's language, and I understand your comment, and I can appreciate it. I was trying to stay consistent with the ordinance's verbiage.
Mr. Chair? Mr.
Victor?
Chair.
So I think you made it clear, but I want to make it ultra clear here. You're looking to keep Delaware, you're looking to build 3 houses, 3 buildable lots per side on Delaware, correct?
That's the
That's the
intention.
ultimate goal. So we're looking at lots that are not super wide, but super deep on each sides,
They will be, yes, they will be deeper lots.
right? Okay, cool, thank you.
Mhm.
All right, got it.
Mr.
Go
Chair.
ahead, Don.
Thanks. I have a question for our board professionals. So when doing this, we'll call it a concept plan for lack of a better term, to determine the number of lots, do you have to factor in the stormwater structures? Because we've lost some stormwater structures in what I saw in the previous application. Does that need to be factored in regards to what would be conforming
Well,
in this
there's a
particular concept?
Well, first, let me just say that this has never been applied in Long Hill, this ordinance. I don't believe that anyone's ever applied for a density modification under this particular ordinance and these provisions, so you get to do it first. So, but there is a statement in the ordinance which says that the approving authority shall not approve such sketch subdivision plat if it includes lots which could not, because of their situation. So you're going to have to make that determination, what that situation may be, or, not and, or, the presence of critical areas be developed for residential purposes. Now, we have the issue of the C-zone and the lot that's in the C-zone. Could that be developed for residential purposes in the state that it is right now, without any further relief? I don't know. I haven't heard any testimony. Can this development be developed with all of the necessary stormwater management facilities that you would need under the stormwater regulations? I don't know, but that's information that the board needs to know before the board can accept the sketch plat under the terms of this ordinance. At least that's my read, but the board is going to have to make that decision.
Right. I mean, because we're trying to determine the number
Correct.
of lots.
Yes, exactly.
So that's a big important step, because we don't want the applicant to waste a whole lot of time then
Exactly.
doing 6 lots that don't meet
Exactly.
our expectations.
Correct, correct. And at this point, even as a concept plan, if you're bringing a concept plan, I mean, generally in concept plans, you're going to show more or less where, where things like that are going to go, because they're necessary. And I will allow our engineer to opine on that.
Yeah, pretty much they're going to have to conform to everything that's in the subdivision and zoning ordinance anyway, whether it's for stormwater management, roadways, so on and so forth. Mr. Nusser, just quick question. Are you going to present a concept density modification plan before you go full board engineering plans, or how are you going to proceed?
Well, again, it's not something we've discussed, whether we would just come back with, this is the density modification plan that we would like to proceed with, showing the number of lots, and then go into full engineering, or whether we would just fully engineer it and bring it back to the board. So I don't know the answer.
Okay, it just might be helpful, though, to present what you intend to do with the lots for the board to really get a good view of the 3 lots on one side, 3 on the other, and how you may, configure that. And obviously, it's up to you folks to figure out all the engineering aspects, which is when we'll have more of a comment on that. But I just thought it might be useful for the board to see, your ultimate concept plans of, 3 lots on one side, 3 on the other.
Understood.
Certainly a prudent step. It's up to you as the applicant, but obviously before you go into the expense of engineering full plans and coming in with a new application, you can come in with a concept plan to show how this might work under that other requirement, under that ordinance, because, that first sentence would be too easy if the board would simply accept a sketch plat because they simply comply with the bulk standards under a conventional subdivision without adding all of the other things that we have to look at in order to approve a subdivision.
Well, and to be fair to us and any other applicant that would proceed in this manner, to say that you have to be able to prove that this is 100% buildable is basically asking that it be designed, you design this out to show that it complies. I mean, what other way is there to show that it truly 100% complies than to fully engineer this to show that it does? So I respectfully disagree that there's a need to show that level of infrastructure improvements for this. Again, I thought that in my reading of the ordinance, and again, I'm just an engineer here, and I'm not an attorney, but that the requirement was that the sketch plat had to conform to the R2 bulk standards, which, as the plat shows, it does, as well as to meet the critical area requirements. And, we walk through that, and my letter documents how we comply with those various stipulations of the ordinance.
Yeah, Mr. Nasser, I'm just looking at the previous 8 plots that you had planned, and the 3 on the south side, you were asking for variances to have those homes closer to, the main structures closer to the road because of the critical area behind those homes, the steep slopes. So on this plat, it doesn't take those steep slope areas into consideration. This is just, here's 6 plots that fit within this land.
So first, let me go back to the plan.
Gonna need sneakers.
I should have left them on. So yes, we have, again, first thing we did was we chopped it up, if you will, unceremoniously into how many lots can this yield, and we can fit 6 lots. And then we went and we looked and we said, where can we build homes on these lots, right? Because we have to meet those critical area standards. I can't just cut up a lot and leave something unbuildable. And that's where on, again, lot 1, there's an area on the northwest corner within the building setback and outside of the critical area setbacks where a home could be constructed. Because again, the critical area setback is simply for the principal structure. Pertinent features can be built within that buffer area. The parking area off the garage, a patio, a deck, a pool. Those can be built there. It's simply the principal structure needs to be further away, and there's an area for it. Similarly, on lot 2.
Well, lot 2 is a very strange.
It is a very strange lot.
It's a very strange lot.
And it is a strange lot, yet it is a conforming lot, and it provides an area, again, in the rear of lot 1, if you will, outside of the critical area setbacks where the principal structure could be built inside the building setback limits. And similarly, again, lot 3, there's the wetland transition area buffer, which is concurrent with the critical area buffer that is kind of in the rear of that lot, but there's plenty of area in there to construct a conforming dwelling within the principal building setbacks and outside of those critical area buffers. So, we have looked and made sure that it's not just that these lots conform to the bulk standards of area, of width, of depth, frontage, that kind of thing, but also that a home could be constructed on this lot, all of these lots, that would be located in an area that wouldn't require relief from the bulk standards or the critical area standards.
So in your testimony, you're saying you've taken those critical areas into consideration as you laid out these lots?
Yes.
Can I just follow on with that?
Yes, sir.
So the way I would just read the ordinance stuff, so what you're saying now, originally you had 8, now you think you can do 6 to your best estimations. If we say this is roughly okay, you cannot do more than 6, you may find that you can only do 5.
That's correct.
Yes.
Yeah, this would be the maximum
This
number
is the
that we would be able
maximum
to
you're
do.
establishing.
Correct.
That's right. And the only other thing that I concern myself with is, to my opinion, I'm not approving any, the word approval is a little bit strong, but it's just, for me, it's just purely simply the number of lots is the only thing I care about, potentially.
Yeah,
I don't care about the roads. I shouldn't have to, but I'm just giving my, I'd be very concerned about what you describe as roads here. And one other thing that we did ask for before, and it hasn't been addressed, it doesn't look like, or considered, is whether or not you go through Delaware,
right,
connect it through, or you think of something else.
right.
That doesn't necessarily have to be here, because this is more, I'm just going to read this as more about establishing number of lots than it is actual, should we say, design and layout. Is that fair?
Yes, and I think you're right to say approval is probably too strong a word. I don't recall the exact language in the ordinance, but I don't believe the ordinance uses the word approval when it comes to this
Acceptance.
stage.
We use the word accept.
Acceptance.
Acceptance.
There you go.
Sorry.
So softens it up a little bit for everybody, yeah. But yes.
Thank you.
Do any other members of the board have questions for the engineer?
Excuse me. Again, I just want to go back to what I said before. I just think it might be helpful for the board. You presented the sketch showing 6 conforming lots. If you had another density modified sketch to say, look, this is what we comply with, here's what we think it's going to look like. I mean, I'm not so concerned about the infrastructure and where you're going to place things. I know you can figure that out. But I just think it might be helpful to the board to be able to see, okay, your 6 conforming lots, and here's our density modified lot arrangement. That's all. But it's up to you how you want to proceed, if you want to present another concept, or if you just want to go into engineering, if you're confident that, everything is fine, so be it.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the reason why, we've actually, we're taking the, I think the really aggressive step would be to say, we have a 6-lot conforming plan, and to come in with everything soup to nuts. And so I think if, we are, if we're in agreement or acceptance of the 6 lots being the maximum number of yield, obviously as the applicant will go back and decide whether, yes, we want to come back with just a concept plan, or we want to go on like full engineering. And then I guess just for our own sake, and it's probably a little bit ahead of things, but to your point earlier, it wouldn't require notice necessarily to be on there.
Concept does not.
So if
no.
it's just a concept,
Yep.
And just thinking of time, in my head, thinking of timelines and discussions that we have had about timing of submissions that, that may be, that may work in the timeline. But again, I'm not going to commit to something on that because it's not mine to commit to.
For lack of a better term, this is more better. I'm still concerned about the south side of Delaware and how you're trying to get those 3 homes in there, but this is more better.
I just have one more question. So, we keep saying that you had 8 lots, but actually you had 9, right? Because you have the open space lot that you had been proposing.
Correct.
And currently, it's more than 6, it's 7, right? Because you have that lot that's in the conservation zone.
Right, so it would be, so in this plan, it's going off of buildable lots. We were at 8 buildable lots. This is 6 buildable lots. And like I said, we could take the balance of the land that's in the C zone and combine it into Lot 3, and it would be split zoned as the main property is now. And yes, so then the resultant density modification subdivision that would come in would have 6 buildable lots on it.
Including the C-zone, land in the C-zone.
Well, it would have 6 buildable lots,
Okay,
and then the balance of the land that would be in open space, restricted, would not be a buildable lot. So that lot is not, the yield is to set the number of buildable lots. So if we're setting 6 buildable lots, if we have one, or in this case, as I had opined earlier, that there may be a balance and likely to be a balance of open space on the north side of Delaware Ave, there would be 2 open space lots associated with it, but they would be restricted against any construction.
Do you know how big or how much, what the square footage or the acreage is of the land that's in the C-zone?
4 acres, right?
Is it?
4.
Mr. Vital is telling me it's 4 acres. I'm gonna just double check.
I
My-
think it's just shy of 4 acres, isn't it?
Shy 4 acres?
I think so, I'm not sure.
Per the most recent plans, it was 2.86 acres that was in that C-zone.
So in a density
Much higher.
modification subdivision, you have to have five contiguous acres. And so are you saying that the contiguousness would cross Delaware?
Likely, yes. Yeah, that there would be, it wouldn't just be limited to the C-zone. It would be, obviously portions of the R2 zone as well. That would extend up to Delaware Ave. Whether, I don't have a finalized plan in front of me, whether there's 5 acres of land on the south side of Delaware to begin with or not, I don't recall. But then, yes, there would be a balance of open space land on the north side. So it's adjoining, contiguous. No, it's got the road crossing through it, but I think I would hope, let's say, that if the board were to look at a plan and it contained restricted open space area that was connected, albeit across the road, from the balance of the land on the south side of Delaware Avenue, and that helped to provide additional residential buffering or buffering to the residential properties. Neighbors who are here and concerned about that providing a restricted area that's basically a buffer to them would be seen as a benefit. But again, that's merits of a case that isn't here yet.
Thank you.
Any other members of the board have questions? If not, I'm going to ask Mr. Skolnick if he has questions. I'm sure he does. But I would ask that you try not to repeat questions that have already been answered. I understand that there are some subtleties involved in the exact nature of this drawing and where it fits into a grand scheme of applications. But we've explored and bounced off the many different angles, and I'd appreciate if you would try to come up with new questions.
I'll do my best, but there's a massive miscommunication.
You need a microphone.
Non-communication.
Wait, Mr.
You
Skolnick,
need a
is the microphone? Is the cordless right there?
Should be laying there. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll do my best, Chairman, but I trust the board will give me at least a little leeway. I won't be too long.
Can you hold the microphone?
As I
Is it on?
You
It is on.
basically have
You
to
just have
have
to
it
hold it.
in your mouth for it
Yeah,
to
yeah,
hear you.
it's true.
That's a very appealing thought. And you just had it in your mouth?
Be careful, this is recorded.
I have no problem being a loud talker as the third son in the family. So, Mr. Nusser, do you have section 158.5B? That's the density modification ordinance. Do you have that in front of you?
I don't have it directly in
I'm
front
going
of
to
me.
give you a copy if that's...
Perfect. Please.
Chairman, this goes to a point about what the conforming plan has to look like. I'm going to turn your attention to 158.5B1, Mr. Nusser. Do you see that? And the second sentence is, the purpose of the sketch subdivision plat, correctly titled, is to establish the number of building lots to be permitted within the subdivision, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and it's your opinion that this conforming plan just has to meet the R2 bulk requirements in the critical areas, correct?
Yeah.
And you've represented to the board, I started marking it 7, 8, 9 times, that this is a conforming plan, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and when you say conforming, that's only to the R2 bulk and the critical area requirements, correct?
As is required.
Okay, does section 158.5B1 say that the conforming plan is only for the R2 bulk and critical areas and leave out the rest of the ordinance? Does it say that in this section?
The first sentence says, shall first submit a sketch subdivision plat to the approving authority in accordance with the zoning standards enumerated in the schedule of bulk requirements applicable to subdivisions not under density modification provisions.
So it's your opinion, it's only the bulk requirements and not the remainder of the requirements,
That's what it says.
okay? Let's just run through the rest of the requirements, if we can. Just- Chairman, this is really for the board to decide. I think we're going to point out some of the other requirements that aren't satisfied with this plan that sets the gross number.
This is where we're going. Okay, we're going to mark this as an exhibit, even though this is right out of Long Hill Township's ordinance. It does skip around, and there are some notes here, so we're going to mark this as an exhibit. We'll mark it 01.
Okay. Mr. Nusser, just to hit a couple, on the first page of the handout I gave you, 157.1E, the minor streets, the right-of-way requirement is 50 feet, correct?
That's what it says.
And the conforming plan that you produced for the board, that, the alleged conforming plan, that shows a 40-foot minor street.
The conforming plan uses what RSIS permits for streets.
Well, the municipal ordinance says 50, correct?
The municipal ordinance says 50.
Okay, and isn't it true, if you go to 40 on RSIS, there can't be any parking on the street?
That's correct.
Okay, let's just flip to the next page. Chairman, I'm trying to go quickly, so as not to belabor. The next page, letter J, has some requirements on grades. Did you figure out the grade of proposed Road B at all by any chance?
No, we didn't.
Okay, do you know whether that grade exceeds 15% or not on Road B?
I would presume that it would be designed to not exceed 15%.
But you don't know one way or the other whether proposed Road B complies with Section J here.
No, it's not been designed.
Okay, going down to letter M, requires a radius of 55 feet on a turnaround area, and the radii on your proposed roads doesn't meet this requirement either, is that correct?
It meets the RSIS requirement.
Yeah, but it doesn't meet the municipal ordinance here, correct?
It is 48 feet.
And that's less than 55.
Yes, it is.
Okay. And then, if we go to the final item that I pointed out, section 158.4, the lots. 158.4B, can you read that to me?
Insofar as is practical, side lot lines shall be at right angles to straight streets and radial to curved streets.
Do you have an opinion as to whether the plan that you produced, the conforming sketch plat, has side lot lines at right angles to straight streets?
Generally speaking, extending immediately off the road, they do. And then they, as it becomes not practical, they deviate from being at right angles or radial.
Okay, Chairman, that's really all I have. If you'll give me a couple of minutes for argument, I could do that right now.
We're not arguing, this is questions right now.
Fair enough, that's why I asked. Oh, just one more thing, one or two more things. You have the planner's review letter.
Yes.
Could you just pull that out for me for a second? Oops. She had some questions in there about the ability to, I'll pull that out. This is the July 9th letter. Could you turn to page 5? And in that letter, in the bold part at the top, the last sentence, the planner says the applicant should provide the developable area in each lot and delineate a potential building footprint to demonstrate compliance. Do you see that?
Yes.
You could do that if the board requested, I take it, to just prove out that it's possible to get a building footprint on lots 1 and 2.
Yeah, I mean, we can put the area that's, within that footprint outside of, again, the critical buffers and within the setbacks that shows that we can comply with the minimum dwelling square footage.
Okay. It's not on the plans right now, but if the board asks, you could do that to confirm.
I could, yes.
Okay. And then on page 8, towards the bottom, says that the applicant may also require variance for impervious coverage on the non-critical portions of proposed lots 1 and 3. That's a requirement for this stage, for the sketch plat, right? Impervious coverage, because that's clearly a bulk requirement, correct?
Yes.
And did you prove out this variance? Did you do the calculations for that?
Well, again, so the requirement is that no development in the township shall provide more than 70% impervious surface coverage of the non-critical area of the lot. And so, as I had indicated earlier, the overall limit is 15% of the lot, and at 15% of any of the lots, from an impervious standpoint, we wouldn't be able to exceed 70% of the non-critical area.
But if the board asks you, you can do the calculations to prove out, because you're saying that the 6 is the number and it's conforming, but you haven't proven out the impervious coverage calculations just yet, have you?
No, I think, if you look at those lots, maybe lot 2 is the most constrained with critical area. And again, it's critical area, not including those critical area buffers. And just, it doesn't, it's not more than 50% of the lot area that's on there. But yeah, we could provide the calculation.
Okay, thank you for your time. I Do okay on the timing, Chairman?
I'm waiting for you to step away from the
Yeah, I'm
mic.
just collecting my stuff, so I don't garbage here.
Are there any members of the audience who would like to ask questions of the engineer? Presumably, fresh questions. Mr. Arentowitz.
Good evening.
Mr. Owen, Mr. Chairman, can I ask him a question? Are you represented by an attorney at all in this matter?
No, I'm not.
Are you part of a funding group that may be funding the opposition in this matter?
No, I'm not.
Thank you.
If I read from 158.5, land use density modification subdivision, B, paragraph 1. The approving authority, I quote, "The approving authority shall not approve such sketch subdivision plot if it includes lots which could not, because of their situations or presence of critical areas, be developed for residential purposes." So my question is, there were concerns on critical areas, stormwater management, open space. So based upon that requirement in 158.5 B1, do you conform with your sketch?
Yes.
The critical areas are taken care of.
Yes, as we documented on the plan and in our letter that went along with it, the critical areas, again, we've gone through it a couple times about where we could place the dwellings, where they would conform. And again, those critical area setbacks are just for principal dwellings. The critical areas themselves don't, there's not a preclusion against the construction of a driveway or a road through those critical areas. It's really attendant features to the house, patios, decks, pools, et cetera, that couldn't be physically within a critical area. And yes, we would be able to, there's nothing about the proposed layout that would be undevelopable as a result of any critical areas. The critical areas actually have been taken into consideration in great detail with this plan, and this is constructible.
Thank you. You stated previously that the 6 lots will be the maximum number of lots that could be built in this density modification subdivision. Is that correct?
Yes, the maximum number of building lots.
What is, in your opinion, you're the professional, what's the minimum number that could be built?
I mean, the minimum number would be 0, what it is now.
Okay. So we're in the category of 0 to 6.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time.
Anyone else in the audience? Mr. Vitale, what's next?
That's it, Mr. Chairman. We have no other witnesses at this time.
Mr. Chairman? Member of the public?
Oh, please come on.
Excuse me, Mr. Nusser. Is this
Please get closer to the microphone,
Okay.
State your name.
or pick it up and hold it in your hand.
Michelle Menza. I'm a resident of Gillette, 39-year resident of Gillette. Mr. Nusser, is this area zoned for community residents and shelters? Is that a possibility?
I believe it is.
one more thing. Is it true that as late as 2017 and 2018, Mr. Parisi Sr. submitted a full set of plans with proposed 10 single-family residences?
That's true.
Were they developed by you or your firm?
Yes.
Okay. So in essence, Mario Parisi Jr. was not previously, and certainly not now, asking for more than his dad, as was stated at another meeting.
That's correct.
Okay? If there's open space area with your completed plan, is the applicant willing to donate to the community, perhaps a garden?
I would have to talk to the applicant, but it seems reasonable.
Please, you can ask questions about testimony that you have heard from the engineer.
Only today, or only today, or
Today.
If
only today, not previous?
Right.
Okay, then I have a question for the chairman. If in fact there are the public who are not revealing that they're funding council just for the intent to subvert the law that requires them to, that requires them to be quiet during a meeting and let council speak, is that permissible?
Was that a question for the engineer?
No, it was only for you.
It's not my turn to answer questions, I'm sorry.
Can we save that for later?
No, procedural questions can be emailed to me as the board secretary.
Last chance for anyone to ask a question. At this point, would you like to wrap up where we stand on this application and what will happen next?
Are you directing that question at me, Chairman?
I'm looking right at you.
You're looking right at me. Well, according to this ordinance, and let me just note, the exhibit that was just submitted to the board from the objector, 01, the board will note that the ordinance says that they have to comply with the schedule of bulk standards. What was submitted to you, those are not bulk standards. We all know that everything in the 150s, those are design standards. So the board needs to take that into consideration when you're making this decision. So what happens next is the board either accepts, we'll call it an acceptance, because this is not really an approval. This is akin to a concept plan. That's not spelled out abundantly clearly in our ordinance. That ordinance section may not be as artfully written as it could be and should be. However, this is akin to a concept plan, and what the municipal land use law allows is for the board to not necessarily grant an approval, but to have a discussion with the applicant, which is what has occurred here. The subdivision modification ordinance allows the board to accept the number of buildable lots that have been presented in the sketch plat, and thereafter, the applicant may, and that's according to the municipal land use law, may come back with a subdivision plan pursuant to that sketch plat. It also says the same thing in this ordinance, that the applicant may come back with a subdivision application with fully engineered plans and present it to the board. And the only thing that the board is making a decision on today is the ceiling, meaning the maximum number of buildable lots that the applicant will then be permitted to fully engineer plans for. So that's all the board is doing, is accepting that the sketch plat is correct in the maximum number of lots that will be able to be placed into this subdivision when it is fully engineered. Now, the members of the public will thereafter have an opportunity to view all of the plans and to ask questions, and to have your professionals, if you have professionals, I know Mr. Skolnick is here, I know Mr. Skolnick may have other professionals, to review the plans, to question all of the witnesses, and to make comment and opine on the subdivision plan once it is submitted. So this is not an official plan, this is not an official application yet, so this is not an official approval. All this is an acceptance by the board, and I know I'm repeating myself, but I just want to make it really clear that we're establishing, the board is establishing the maximum number of lots that may come before you if the applicant proceeds and fully engineers a subdivision plan.
Are we
clear?
agreed that 6 is the number?
So are we making a motion?
That was going to be my question. So are we making a motion, second and roll call for the
But this is a concept. I mean, do we
agreed
have-
Or is
agreement
it
of
a
the
thumbs
6
up or
lots?
down,
It's
or
a thumbs up
I
or
think-
down, because
Okay.
this is a concept, this is not an
tap our foot
approval.
twice
And,
and
again,
turn around?
not artfully written,
So no roll call, show of hands.
no. This is a thumbs up or down, is what this is.
So there's no penalty if you say nay, because I know if you nay in other motions, you can't vote going
Well,
forward.
if there are enough nays on this board, and the applicant still proceeds to file the application with that number of lots, there's going to be a problem once the application is submitted. So because this is a discussion on a concept, I would strongly suggest that
But if
the
there's
applicant...
not enough nays,
Listen.
I don't want to, if someone votes nay, I don't want them to lose their vote later when the,
No,
Okay.
no, no
Mr. Chairman, a
opinion.
procedural question. Can we comment just in general, before you decide on this vote? We questioned the witnesses, but can we make general comments now before your vote to give our input?
I would object to that.
And I would have to agree with you. I'm sorry, Mr. Arenowitz, but it's not an application. Once the application is before the board, as I said before, all members of the public will have an opportunity to fully review it, to fully vet it, to ask all of the questions that you like, to present your own professionals to testify, and also to make comment at the end of that application. Right now, the board is simply considering whether or not 6 is the magic number for the ceiling.
Yeah, but there was questions made about open space, critical areas, stormwater management, and I'm just saying, do you have enough information to make that decision?
Well, the board is going to have to make that determination based on what was presented today, whether 6 is the magic number, perhaps something less than 6 is the magic number, but, obviously, the applicant is going to have to go back and fully engineer these plans to make that determination based on what the discussion will be in a moment between the board members. The board members are now going to give advice about what this is going to look like. And if they can't fit 6, they won't be able to fit 6 based on whatever the board is going to say at this point.
So I think the decision is no general comments.
No.
Sorry.
Excuse me, I just want to make something else clear, or I
Yes.
think, if we set a ceiling of 6 today,
Right.
in the future, we may only approve 5 or 4. We're establishing a ceiling of 6.
Correct.
Right, so,
Correct.
right, so
Correct.
if we say
Because-
yes to 6 today, it doesn't necessarily mean that when the plans come back, it's just a ceiling.
This is a
I
ceiling.
just want to make sure that's clear, because that's the way I understand it.
This density subdivision modification, this density modification subdivision ordinance is a special kind of an animal. And it establishes criteria and procedures that we don't have when we look at conventional subdivisions. And this is one of those, oddities.
Yeah, I think it should be clear to everyone that the property in question does have some topographical issues and drainage issues that were handled as well as possible in the old application, but which led us to some problems. And perhaps with 6, and with applying the density modified rules, it'll be a little bit easier to lay out lots that make sense and drainage situations that make sense. And so I think that we should encourage the applicant to move on and see if there is a more logical layout with 6 lots, or perhaps you'll decide that fewer makes even more logical sense. But we leave that up to him. I think right now what we're trying to do is exploit the density modified rules in order to create a sound subdivision design. And if you all agree with that, can I see a part of your thumb? Okay. That's as close as you're going to get to a decision tonight. Mr. Vitale, will you and your client be ready on September 14 with a new application?
Chris, that's a little bit close, I think.
I'm sorry, Chairman, you
Now
broke
you-
it.
Great
Pay for it.
things.
Get the
Not gonna
engineer
let
on
me
there.
back in.
Get a bill.
Please. Yeah, I think our hope and intention would be to be able to meet that meeting. Obviously, new application, new notice, so we're not carrying anything here where we need to necessarily worry about the specific date, but yes, we would hope to be on your September 14th agenda.
I think, Deborah, we can reserve September 14th, but what are your deadlines for completion?
Well, I think that the board professionals would prefer a minimum of 20 business days prior to be able to review a new plan.
Business days.
Yes,
That's very different than,
20 days total. Well, I asked the professionals for their input. How, would you like 3 weeks? Would you, because we're talking about a new application here, so.
Can we get them next week?
Can you get them next week?
Now you-
I mean,
they won't be pretty, but they may be here.
the applicant's attorney is aware of his statutory requirements for notices, so I don't have to go over that. I'm more concerned about review time with a new application submitted for the board professionals.
So we're talking about August 24th approximately,
That would be 3 weeks prior to the hearing, yes.
and that would be a complete application
Yes.
in your hands.
If the professionals are agreeable to that, that's what I would suggest.
Works for me. Or I'll make it work for me.
So 3 weeks before the 14th, you're saying?
Yes.
When does that fall, more or less?
August 24th.
24th.
August 24th. And is that enough time? Because I would prefer to have conversations ahead of schedule so we don't have to do this again,
Understood.
okay?
We can always schedule a Zoom meeting if we have to review prior to coming to the board. And if you as the applicant feel that you're not ready, then we can always carry if we need to.
Right. Well, and it wouldn't be carrying because,
Well, no, but
Well,
if
but
you
you moving
notice
us on
for
the
the
calendar.
14th, right? And
Yeah.
we get to the point where you feel that you're not ready to come back to the board based on the review of our professionals, then we could carry it to another day.
yeah, we'd
Yeah.
certainly, I'd make myself available to, anything that would help the professionals review, whether it's a Zoom meeting or meeting here or whatever it is, just to make sure it's, easiest on the board and everybody has a clean and clear understanding.
Perfect.
So earlier I did give a new application.
Please use the microphone and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Mario Parisi, the applicant, and I did hear earlier, it's a new application, so we do need a new notification, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Now-
Thank you. We're going to take a break until 9:05.